Yeehaw! And howdy, gremlins, and welcome to today's discussion. Recently, we've been diving into some very deep, complex, and introspective topics regarding the nature of society and our being. However, I'd like to talk about something else that I think is an incredibly potent subject in terms of taboo, public commentary, and personal fascination: psychoactive substances. Also, real quick, I'm going to give a little intro and disclaimer and all that, but if you just want to hear the list, I'll throw up a timestamp on screen you can skip to. Throughout history, human beings have held a close relationship with various mind-altering drugs, both medicinally and recreationally. Albeit, our continual evolution as a social enterprise has caused us to restrict, ban, or criminalize a wide array of compounds, either because of our fears of their dangers or a disregard for their potential. Growing up, I thought that all drugs were evil and illegal.
Goats are buying, okay?
Drugs, how menacing. However, it wasn't until I was older that I recognized how they still act as a cornerstone of our society. Despite attempts to create a war on drugs, which, for the record, is a pretty funny idea across the board to start a battle with a concept, drugs are still a commonly sought after commodity, be it from legal above-the-board substances like nicotine, alcohol, caffeine, and sometimes cannabis, or scrutinized illegal experiences derived from compounds such as a variety of narcotics, stimulants, screamers, laughers, and the notorious gigglers. A very, very large percentage of people indulge in at least some form of mind alteration and cognitive modulation from these fascinating chemicals that seamlessly hijack our pre-existing neurological technology to change the world as we know it. And to many people, these celebrated legal and criticized illegal compounds make up the entirety of drug information, except for random scare stories of people eating faces or sheaving off peepees. Although that's not the end of the story, not at all, and today I want to draw attention to the existence of compounds that have fallen through the cracks of our persecutive selective system. Here are 7 drugs that are either in a gray area in our society or are completely legal that cause psychoactive effects. Now, before we get into this, I need to provide an exceptionally important disclaimer. I absolutely do not recommend usage of any of these compounds. That isn't to say that some don't have merit. I mean, we're going to touch on some plants that are mild sedatives at best that I think can provide benefit to certain people in certain situations. However, many of these compounds are very poorly studied in their effects in a medical or scientific setting and can cause drastically negative side effects. Hell, a few of them are reported to be extremely unpleasant and feverish, like literally not fun. So this is just a silly, haha, let's learn some facts about some goofy mind changers. But that's it. I'm not your dad. Hopefully. That would be a very weird turn of events, but seriously, don't go around experimenting with things you don't understand and end up hurting yourself or others. With all that being said, and hopefully listened to, let's talk about some wacky drugs that are just unrestricted. This won't be a comprehensive list. I actually narrowed down this list quite a bit to just 7, and honestly, spoiler alert, number 7 might surprise you. Because it's more of a group of substances, so 6.5 to like a million substances, depending on how you look at it. I have a good amount left though, so maybe I'll do a couple videos on this topic. This is just 7 out of like an easy 20, probably more, that exist I'm aware of. Also, I'm not going to do a deep dive on any of these and like their histories and deep social effects, because that's reserved for the drug iceberg whenever I make the next videos on it. It's a beast, so I've been focusing on other projects for now. Regardless, let's start with one of the most notorious, well-known quote-unquote legal substances, diphenhydramine, otherwise known as Benadryl. Diphenhydramine is often used as a mild sleep aid and a general antihistamine to fight against allergy symptoms. However, when taken in excruciating excess, it acts as a deliriant, similar to another anticholinergic compound we will touch on in a little bit. Deliriants are actually what Dare describes psychedelics to be. Full-on hallucinogens. Like, real as day, imagine you're sitting in your room watching this entire video and then making a sandwich for lunch type vivid. except in reality you're just staring at a wall in a silent, dark closet, putting socks on top of each other and then eating them type hallucinations. They are relatively indistinguishable from real life at a glance. Plus, this is a compound that basically gets its effects from mildly poisoning you. Seriously, it causes physical discomfort and makes you see things, often pretty disturbing things for the most part, and for some reason often reported to give a show of insects and arachnids crawling all over the place and maybe seeing sleep paralysis demons that you can walk up to and try to put your hands in their mouths. Also, this compound can cause damage to organs, terrifying experiences, and have lasting effects on the mind and body. I mean, I suppose it's not always 100% of the time guaranteed to be a completely devastating experience. And I will say it is a very interesting substance, and a guilty pleasure of mine is listening to people's trip reports on diphenhydramine. It's like listening to a ghost story around a campfire. Ooh, spooky. But yeah, those seemingly innocent little pink pills are no joke. And if you're trying to sleep and one or two Benihana isn't helping, don't just keep taking them, silly. Next up, let's completely juxtapose the previous entry with a pretty chill plant substance called Kanna. Kanna, or its scientific name, Dr. Sceletium tortuosum, I think, is a fully legal, unregulated plant that works like a mild sedative. Of anything on this list, this is the one compound that poses the least risk. Its effects kind of make it seem like the middle child between CBD and THC, but without all that crazy smoke shop Delta 8 gummy bear extract type stuff. Just a plant that some people smoke, drink as a tea, eat, or I cannot even imagine why someone would choose this route of administration, but apparently some people snort it, which to me sounds kind of awful, but respect, I guess. That's pretty much this one. Hell, let's just jump back and forth between terrifying and somewhat benign for right now. Next up, let's talk about nutmeg. You heard it here first, folks. That spice that you add to your baked goods can have some bizarre psychoactive effects in highish dosages. Although, okay, once again, it's kind of just mildly poisonous and often gives people headaches and nausea and also acts as a deliriant. It's just as, if not more dangerous than diphenhydramine, but its reports aren't usually as negative. It seemingly makes people feel somewhat stoned, which, once again, if that's what you're looking for, just get some Kanna or something, dude. Drink some chamomile and ride the dragon. The chemical that is largely attributed to these effects is myristicin, which acts as a somewhat euphoric, stimulating compound with slightly hallucinogenic effects. However, it can very easily cause some deeply troubling side effects that immediately rule it out of its recreational value in my eyes. It can cause everything from flushness to heart problems, hypertension to full-blown delirium, and some pretty nasty come downs. So once again, be careful if you're putting this on your food. If you're a nutmeg fanatic, go easy, man. This that China White, straight out Alaska, alien Bubba Kush. Alright. This next one I'm going to keep short and sweet. Blue Lotus, aka Dr. Nefeya Cerulia, I think. Again, honestly, I can summarize this pretty easily like I did with Kanna. Simply put, mild plant sedative. Can be smoked, eaten, drank as a tea. I don't think anyone's trying to snort these flowers. Mildly relaxing, legal, and unregulated. Which, I guess to reiterate though, these are not studied well. You can find a bunch of anecdotal information and some folk wisdom about these compounds, but science and the government haven't tried to do a deep dive on these, which means that there are no pesky FDA standards associated with them. So having like salmonella or metals like arsenic or cadmium in these products is possible. They don't go through any quality control. It's just some nice middle-aged woman named Sandy who grows these because she believes in herbal medicine you'd be buying these from. So again, exercise caution. However, Blue Lotus and Kanna are not to be mixed up with another plant-derived psychoactive compound that absolutely demands respect. Salvia divinorum. Oh boy, this compound is insane. I will give this one a little background because I have a ton of information about it, and I'm sure the name Salvia sounds familiar to you. also known as sage of the diviners. It is actually a cousin of the sage plant. Same family, and salvia has been used for who knows how long as a ritualistic tool, notably by the Mazatec peoples in Mexico. However, their use of the substance as a spiritual catalyst is vastly different than what people have blindly jumped into in the West. The Mazatec people utilize the compound by slowly chewing the plant leaves themselves, which causes a psychedelic experience for several hours that is vaguely similar to the experience of ayahuasca, except without all the purging. I highly recommend watching the episode of the show Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia on it, in which Hamilton Morris goes to southern Mexico to experience an authentic ceremony with the plant. However, we Americans believe in two things: freedom and explosions. And the way salvia has entered our society is largely influenced by the latter. See, salvia isn't federally legal or illegal. It's kind of in a gray market, and its legality is dictated by state governments. So, a lot of the western United States has fully legal salvia extracts available, but the issue is these are extracts. So this compound is a radically more powerful form of the native leaf itself. It can range anywhere from 8 times to 60 times the strength of the plant and is often smoked to create an immensely intense experience that crushes down a long ceremonial psychedelic experience into minutes. Also, keep in mind that the smoke shops that carry these products often aren't selling salvia-like flower, if we would want to use cannabis terms. It's more like K2 or how synthetic cannabinoids were sold. They just take pure salvinorin A and spray it on plant matter, like for instance ground up tea leaves. The experience itself is a rapidly onset, super bizarre psychedelic experience that demands respect. It's like DMT's weird basement-dwelling cousin. It can cause breakthroughs in which an individual is fully immersed into a hallucinogenic landscape, except, unlike DMT, it does not render you unconscious during a breakthrough, so you can be fully mobilized during this trip, running around and doing stuff that you cannot see. Salvia is by no means an exclusively negative drug, and can provide very insightful lessons about consciousness and our psychology, but you have to exercise caution with it. Many people have been traumatized by not understanding the strength and world-collapsing visions this compound can deliver. Also, unlike traditional psychedelics, it acts on all sorts of weird receptors, such as the kappa opioid receptor, and can be highly unpredictable. I can say without a doubt that this is by far the weirdest psychedelic that I've ever researched, but it shouldn't be demonized. It is a very interesting and complex chemical with tons of potential so long as it's used with care and treated with the respect it deserves. Ooh boy. Well, that was a doozy. It has now been like 24 hours since I recorded these previous entries, so technically you and I have spent over a day together. God, we are so cute. Next up on my list, let's talk about 2 different compounds that are in the same class and act relatively similar for all sakes and purposes. Think of this entry like those annoying kids in kickball who said, "Nah, you can't just pick me or them, we're a package deal." Codependent ass, ruining the picking system ass. Today's package deal kickball rebels, who are just gonna talk the whole time instead of playing the game, are nitrous oxide and amyl nitrate, which will just count as one entry. So, little bonus info for you. Nitrous oxide, also known as laughing gas, is an NMDA receptor agonist, putting it in the dissociative class of drugs. It produces a very brief state of anesthesia and psychedelia. Because it is relatively safe, it's used as the propellant in whipped cream cans so that little kids don't accidentally huff like Freon. It can be purchased in all sorts of forms as a culinary preparation tool, but it isn't something to be abused. Foremost, it can lead to a vitamin B12 deficiency and cause damage to the brain and spinal cord, which, not fun. Plus, because it is often packaged in a very condensed form, the gas can be cold enough to damage the lungs, along with perpetuating oxygen deprivation. Fast abuse of this substance is a bad idea, but nitrous does have recognized medical and recreational merit if used very responsibly. Thankfully, fiends are known for their moderation and caution. Its cousin, amyl, has seen a lot of usage in different LGBT or rave settings. Acts similarly in some ways, causing a very muscle-relaxing experience. Known as poppers, amyl nitrate was used to treat angina, which is, in fact, a funny-ass term to call a type of chest pain. Now, poppers no longer required a prescription during the 1960s because of its safe track record. However, this was with, I guess, supposed medical usage and through reputable vendors. Abuse of poppers can certainly cause all sorts of detrimental health impacts. And funnily enough, it is legal to buy, sell, and possess poppers, but illegal to use to get high. Now, saving the two of the scariest compounds for last, let's start with a drug that has been used by indigenous peoples, and as such has an established, though rocky, history. Let's talk about the Datura plants. And I guess like nightshade plants, we'll throw them all together. Boom, another bonus. Datura is an anticholinergic deliriant. Remember how I said diphenhydramine was poisoning you to get a lot of effects? Yeah, Datura, or its active ingredient scopolamine, honestly, I think just poisons you quite a bit, plus some of the other alkaloids in the plant. Not good for you. Imagine constantly feeling like you have to urinate, but can't, being deeply dehydrated, and, being absolutely delirious for several days. Dude, this plant even looks evil. Like, look at these seed pods, bro. That's horrifying. Now, this compound has been used ritualistically by shamans for Lord knows how long, notably by indigenous peoples of the Americas. It has been thought of as a doorway to accessing the dead and the spirit realm. This plant grows everywhere. Like, I'm sure you've seen it or some variant of it in the past month or so, if you've been out and about at all. Similar to scopolamine is its less effective friend, atropine, and that's the one that's often in like nightshade plants, which works in a very similar way but doesn't bind to receptors quite as efficiently. This is a compound that virtually everyone except for those who use it ritualistically or those who would just skydive without a parachute should probably steer clear of. I mean, its side effects can be long-lasting, and it's, believe it or not, often cited much more negatively than that of diphenhydramine or Salvia. I have a lot more to say about this one, as well as all the others, but I'll save that for the iceberg. Finally, I wanted to touch on a sort of class of compounds that are often, yet briefly, I don't know if legal is the right word, it's also a pretty gray area, but I guess technically legal after their initial synthesis. Research chemicals. These are typically analogs of other psychoactive drugs that have no history of human usage. I mean, they are brand new, not studied, and can be bought online while labeled not for human consumption. I mean, these drugs are often utterly terrifying in nature because their dosage, long and short-term effects, and general basic information aren't known prior to their sale. These vendors sort of take a grassroots guinea pig approach to science where you are the lab rat if you take it. Although I will say, while there have been countless cases of these drugs causing pain, terror, and death, it is also one of the few ways new psychoactive drugs, in particular things like novel psychedelics, can be discovered. The government has little to no interest in exploring psychedelics that have been around since the dawn of time, let alone the excursion of new ones. Some loved novel psychedelics include the 2Cs, such as 2CB, and horrifying crimes against God like 25I, the notorious NBOME, and Bromo Dragonfly. Which I will say the N-bomb and Bromo, boy, aren't evil drugs, once again, just way more dangerous counterparts that can be lethal to a much safer substance physiologically like LSD. Well, thanks for watching. That's all I have for you for now. And since I've been talking for quite some time, I'll keep this outro short and sweet. I love you, you smell weird, and that's alright, my little muppety muff. Peace out, boy, girl, or non-binary scout.